A shaking woman secretly slips a handwritten note to a vet. She read it and immediately called 911.
911, what's your emergency?
Love is blind. You probably heard this phrase a million times in movies, books, conversations with friends, everywhere we're reminded of it. However, when the time comes to face our feelings and we find ourselves in the complicated situation of choosing between the most intelligent and the most irrational decision, the heart wins the game and we lose our way. This doesn't mean that letting the heart lead us is always a mistake. The problem arises when the love we feel for each other prevents us from seeing reality. An emotional blindness so great that it is capable of putting at risk our own life and the lives of those who matter most to us. Carolyn Reichler was only 23 years old when she made the unexpected decision to get married and leave her entire life behind. They were an enthusiastic pair of artists with a bright future ahead of them, two art lovers who shared a passion for painting. Carolyn was born and raised in the sunny and cozy city of San Diego, Florida, where years later she would meet her future husband. Her family was always small. Her father died of an aneurysm when she was still a baby, causing her and her mother to have to learn to get by without anyone's help. It wasn't an easy childhood, let alone a happy one, but they always had each other and that was enough. Her mother, Helen Reichler, was a beloved art teacher at the local high school in La Jolla neighborhood, something that brought Carolyn into contact with art from an early age, and she ended up falling completely in love with the craft. However, it wasn't always clear to her that her destiny wouldn't be to teach others, but to make a living from her work as an artist. From the age of 10, Carolyn began to show signs of her talent as a sculptor and illustrator. Her mother taught her all the secrets of art, and she would give her free rein of her creativity for hours in the small workshop her mother had created in the garage. Helen quickly realized that her daughter had a gift and would soon be ready to show her creations to the world, so she began entering her in different youth art competitions. Carolyn always won first or came in first place. As she grew older and finished her compulsory studies, Carolyn knew exactly what she wanted to do with her life: perfect her technique and become a renowned artist. To do so, she decided to study fine arts at the University of Florida, where she not only managed to stand out and place among the best students in her class, but also where she would know for the first time what it meant to be in love. Jeremy Floyd was a senior, and like her, he had a great talent for illustration. All his works were abstract, painted in oil with bright colors that captured the viewer's attention instantly. Carolyn fell in love with him and his work instantly. It was love at first sight. Their relationship was intense and their courtship fleeting. Everything was moving too fast, but she was too much in love and unable to think clearly. Her mother warned her several times about how dangerous it was to make rash decisions, but she didn't listen. "Darling, I only ask you to wait a little. You're very young and you have an innate talent that you deserve to explore. I'm afraid that by getting married, you'll forget your dreams. No man's more important than you, my love. Your future as an artist has always been your priority, and now you won't even consider continuing your studies and you want to go live with that boy you barely know." Her mother reproached her the day Carolyn confessed her wedding plans. "Jeremy's all I care about. There'll always be time for art, but right now I need him and he's asked me to marry him and start a family. Isn't that the same thing you did with Dad back in the day? Weren't you madly in love with him? Well, now it's my time, my decision," Carolyn replied dryly, ready to do anything for the love she felt for Jeremy. A year later, and with their studies unfinished, Carolyn and Jeremy got married. After the wedding, they moved to Jeremy's hometown in Dayland, where they planned to start their own family. "You're my whole world, Carolyn. I promise I'll never leave you, and I'll take care of you and our family till the end of my days," Jeremy told her, very much in love in the weeks following their wedding. And the truth is that Jeremy kept his promise, though not in the way Carolyn expected. After the wedding, Carolyn distanced herself from everything she'd ever known, including her mother. Jeremy became the center of her world and did whatever he wanted, which never included making plans with other couples or friends. Jeremy was always alone and did not like Carolyn spending time alone with other people. A dominant and dangerous attitude that the young artist didn't know how to interpret at first. She stopped calling her mother regularly, and if she did, it was always in Jeremy's presence. She hardly went out, and her circle of friends had shrunk to zero. During her first year of marriage, Carolyn felt profoundly lonely. Not even painting could comfort her. Deep inside, she knew something was wrong, but she was also afraid to face reality and speak her mind to her husband. She was afraid of her husband, and that was the terrible truth. Their marriage was not what she expected by a long shot. Unfortunately, it took her too long to realize it, and by the time she worked up enough courage to stand up to him and tell him she needed to get her life back, it was too late. That afternoon, Carolyn received her first beating. She didn't see it coming. Her husband seemed calm and looked at her lovingly as she spoke to him, when suddenly his expression darkened and his caresses turned to blows. The next morning, Carolyn awoke in pain and could barely remember what had happened. Her whole body ached, especially her head, and she felt very weak, probably from the sedatives Jeremy forced her to take while she was trying to recover from one of her strokes. From that moment on, Carolyn knew her life was over and the worst of her nightmares began. The situation didn't change for days, although gradually Carolyn learned to fake it better to keep her husband from punishing her. Later, she also learned to pretend to swallow the sedatives he administered every 6 hours to keep her under control. In this way, she gradually regained consciousness and began to feel stronger to plot an escape plan. Jeremy Floyd was an abuser and a convicted felon, although she would learn that much later. First, she had to find a way to get away and contact the police without him noticing. Otherwise, the only way out of that house would be in a coffin, and she wasn't going to let that happen. The second week after the abuse began, Carolyn hatched a plan. It was a plan fraught with risk, but if it worked, it promised to dramatically eliminate her problems and achieve what she set out to do: return to her mother in San Diego and get her husband behind bars. For although Jeremy Floyd thought he had Reichle too scared to do anything, he was wrong. The key to Carolyn's plan working was in her pet, their 3-year-old dog Willow, whom they had adopted when they got married. Of course, the decision to adopt the animal was Jeremy's as well, but Carolyn adored that dog and wanted to set him free as much as she did. Willow's in bad shape. He's been lying down all day without eating, and if I touch him on his belly, he whines. We should take him to the vet. I think it could be serious. Please, let's go to the clinic to have him checked out, Carolyn suggested to her husband with concern but acting normal. She had to look worried but not too worried, as that might make him suspicious of her plan. It wasn't easy, but the young woman convinced Floyd to let her take the dog to her vet, according to the Volusia County Sheriff's Office. Floyd agreed, although he traveled with her with a loaded gun in her pocket. On the drive there, the man threatened to kill Reichle and her mother if she did anything to rat him out. If you do anything to endanger me, you're dead. Do you understand me? I'll never let you go, Carolyn. You're my wife and you'll always be by my side. The sooner you understand that, the better. I only agreed because I care about Willow and he's part of our family, but when we'll go home, you'll never leave again. He threatened her with a gun and his gaze was filled with hatred. Carolyn felt like her heart was going to explode, but she didn't give in and continued with her plan as she had planned. In a few minutes, they arrived at the clinic, and although the young woman was scared to death, while Jeremy was inside the office with a dog, she smuggled a secret note to a girl on the staff. She left the note in the pocket of her gown, and as she looked at it, the veterinarian could read her lips asking for help. "Help me," she said without uttering a sound and her eyes full of fear. The note read, "Call the police, my boyfriend is threatening me, he has a gun, please don't let him know." The worker took the note very seriously. She immediately contacted the authorities and told them everything she knew. The staff then pretended to continue with their duties, while Reichle and Floyd waited together for the results of an x-ray in a side room. It all happened very quickly. Within 15 minutes, the police showed up at the clinic and arrested Floyd at gunpoint. Jeremy was held without bail at the Volusia County Jail, where the veterinary clinic was located, on several charges, including domestic violence, aggravated assault with a firearm, and false imprisonment. Reichle, meanwhile, was transported to the nearest hospital, where she was treated for a head injury, a black eye, and bruises on her arms. She was admitted for a week, and when she was released, she returned to live with her mother in San Diego and resumed her art studies. She later learned that he'd been sentenced to 20 years in prison without bail. Jeremy would never bother her or any woman again. The nightmare was over, and now she could return to her life without fear that this man was waiting for her in hiding to take revenge. It was very difficult, but Carolyn managed to pick up where she left off. The pain that Jeremy caused her would take a long time to go away. Therapy would help speed up the process, but her main goal was the same one she had before falling in love with that terrible man: to be an artist. Did you like this touching and surprising story? If so, we invite you to leave us a comment expressing your opinion. If you want to continue enjoying inspiring stories like this one, subscribe to our channel or check out the other videos shown at the bottom of the screen. Thank you for your cooperation.